Let go of me, Derek. Emma's voice cracked as her ex-boyfriend's hands tightened around her throat, pressing her against the cold elevator wall. The numbers above flickered between floors 17 and 18, the mechanical hum the only witness to her terror. You think you can just walk away from me, after everything I've done for you? Derek's breath reeked of whiskey, his grip growing stronger with each ragged word. Emma's vision began to blur, her perfectly manicured nails clawing desperately at his wrists. The elevator doors opened with a soft ding on the 18th floor. Walk away before you can't. The voice was deep, controlled, and carried the kind of authority that made grown men reconsider their life choices. Derek's head snapped toward the sound, his grip loosening just enough for Emma to gasp for air. Standing in the doorway was a man who commanded attention without trying. Tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair styled impeccably despite the late hour. His charcoal gray suit probably cost more than Emma's monthly rent, and his pale blue eyes held a coldness that made Derek's drunken rage seem like a child's tantrum. "This is none of your business, man," Derek slurred, but his hands had completely released Emma's throat. She slumped against the elevator wall, massaging her neck with trembling fingers. The stranger stepped into the elevator, and suddenly, the space felt even smaller. "I'm making it my business. The lady asked you to let go. You didn't listen. Now I'm asking nicely." His voice never rose above conversational level, but something in his tone made Emma's skin prickle with awareness. Derek puffed out his chest, trying to appear intimidating. At 6 feet tall with a linebacker's build, he'd always used his size to get his way, but next to this stranger, he looked ordinary, unremarkable. "Yeah? And what if I don't want to walk away?" The man smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Then you'll discover exactly why people call me Mr. Romano, and why they do it with respect." Emma's breath caught. Romano. Even she knew that name. In Chicago, there were certain families you didn't cross, certain names that carried weight beyond money or politics. The Romanos weren't just wealthy, they were untouchable. Derek's face paled, some of his liquid courage evaporating. "Look, this is just a misunderstanding between me and my girl. I'm not your girl," Emma found her voice, stronger now despite the rawness in her throat. "We broke up 3 months ago, Derek. You need to stop following me." "Following you?" Derek's anger flared again, alcohol overriding his brief moment of clarity. "You're living in my building. I moved here 2 weeks ago. I had no idea you lived here too." Emma's hands were still shaking, but she forced herself to stand straighter. She worked as a paralegal at one of Chicago's most prestigious law firms. She was educated, independent, and strong. She wouldn't let Derek reduce her to a victim. Mr. Romano's gaze shifted between them, taking in every detail. Emma noticed his eyes linger on the red marks forming around her throat, and something dangerous flickered across his features. "Here's what's going to happen," Romano said, his voice still eerily calm. "Derek, is it? You're going to get off at the next floor. You're going to find somewhere else to live, somewhere far from here, and you're going to forget this young lady exists." Derek laughed, but it sounded forced. "You can't tell me where to live. This is America, buddy." Romano reached into his jacket and Derek flinched, but instead of whatever Derek expected, Romano pulled out a sleek black phone. He pressed a single button and waited. "Vincent, it's Alessandro. I need you to handle a small pest problem in the Meridian Tower. Apartment." He looked at Derek expectantly. "I'm not telling you anything," Derek stammered. Romano's smile widened, becoming genuinely amused. "Vincent, never mind the apartment number. Just handle all the paperwork for unit transfers out of the Meridian. Tonight. Yes, all of them. We'll sort out which one is the right pest later." Emma's eyes widened. He was talking about evicting potentially dozens of people just to make sure Derek was gone. The casual display of power was both terrifying and, she had to admit to herself, incredibly attractive. Derek's bravado crumbled completely. Okay, look, I'll leave Emma alone. We don't need to involve whoever Vincent is." "Vincent handles my real estate acquisitions," Romano said pleasantly, still holding the phone. "Did I mention I own this building?" The elevator dinged softly at the 19th floor, and the doors opened to reveal an opulent hallway with marble floors and crystal chandeliers. This was the penthouse level, Emma realized. Of course it was. "This is my floor," Romano said to Emma. "Would you like to come up? I think you could use a drink in a moment to collect yourself." Derek started to protest, but Romano held up one finger. Just one, and Derek's mouth snapped shut. Emma knew she should be cautious. She didn't know anything about Alessandro Romano except his reputation, which should have been reason enough to politely decline. But Derek had been escalating his harassment for weeks. Tonight was the worst incident yet, but it wouldn't be the last. The police had been sympathetic, but ultimately unhelpful. Derek was clever enough to never threaten her over text or voicemail, and until tonight, he'd never actually put his hands on her. "Yes," she said, stepping out of the elevator. "Thank you." Romano nodded and followed her, turning back to Derek one last time. 24th floor, apartment 2408. I'd start packing tonight if I were you." Derek's mouth fell open. "How did you—" The elevator doors closed on his shocked face. Emma found herself standing in a private foyer that was larger than her entire apartment. The floors were polished marble and original. Oil paintings hung on the walls. Through an archway, she could see a living room with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a spectacular view of Lake Michigan. "How did you know his apartment number?" Emma asked. Alessandro shrugged out of his suit jacket, hanging it on a coat rack that probably cost more than her car. "I make it my business to know who lives in my buildings. Derek Morrison moved in 8 months ago, frequently late on rent, 2 noise complaints from neighbors." He loosened his tie, and Emma tried not to notice how the simple gesture made her pulse quicken. "What I didn't know was that he was stalking one of my other tenants." "I'm not your tenant," Emma said. "I rent from Pinnacle Property Management. Pinnacle is a subsidiary of Romano Holdings, so yes, technically, you're my tenant." He gestured toward the living room. "Please, sit. Can I get you something to drink? Water? Wine? Something stronger?" Emma sank into a leather sofa that was probably worth more than she made in 6 months. "Wine would be good. Red, if you have it." Alessandro moved to a built-in bar area, selecting a bottle that he handled with the reverence most people reserved for religious artifacts. 2015 Barolo. I think you'll appreciate it." While he opened the wine, Emma looked around the penthouse. Everything was elegant and expensive, but it didn't feel cold or impersonal like she'd expected. There were books scattered on tables, a coffee mug left on the mantel, and a pair of reading glasses folded next to a financial newspaper. Someone actually lived here. "You have a beautiful home," she said when he returned with 2 glasses. "Thank you." He handed her the wine and sat in the chair across from her, close enough to talk comfortably, but far enough away to avoid crowding her. After what had just happened with Derek, she appreciated the thoughtfulness. "How long has he been bothering you?" Emma sipped the wine and nearly sighed with pleasure. It was smooth and rich, with layers of flavor she couldn't even identify. "About 2 months. It started with phone calls and texts. Then he began showing up at my work. When I moved apartments, I thought I'd gotten away from him, but he was waiting in the lobby when I came home tonight." "What did the police say?" "That unless he made specific threats or actually hurt me, there wasn't much they could do. Calling your ex-girlfriend isn't illegal." Emma touched her throat gingerly. "I guess tonight changes that." Alessandro's jaw tightened. "It shouldn't have gotten that far. You couldn't have known. I should have known." He set down his wine glass, leaning forward slightly. "I make it my business to know everything that happens in my buildings. The fact that you were being harassed and I was unaware is a failure on my part." Emma studied his face, trying to understand this man who spoke about personal responsibility like it was a sacred duty. "Why do you care? You don't even know me." "I know, more than you might think. Emma Catherine Wells, 28 years old, paralegal at Morrison, Klein & Associates. You graduated summa cum laude from Northwestern with a degree in criminal justice. You've been at the law firm for 3 years, and your supervising attorney considers you one of the best paralegals he's ever worked with." Emma's wine glass stopped halfway to her lips. "How do you know all that?" "Background checks on all tenants. Alessandro said matter-of-factly. Though I'll admit, after seeing your file, I was curious about you. Curious how? Alessandro picked up his wine again, considering his words. You turned down a full scholarship to law school to take care of your sick mother. You worked 2 jobs while putting yourself through undergraduate school. You volunteer at a legal aid clinic on weekends. You're not just beautiful, Emma. You're remarkable. Heat flooded Emma's cheeks. When was the last time a man had complimented her intelligence before her appearance? Derek certainly never had. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything. I'm just explaining why I care about what happens to you. Alessandro's pale blue eyes met hers. And why Derek Morrison is going to discover that bothering you was the biggest mistake of his life. There was something in his tone that should have frightened her. This was a man who could ruin lives with a phone call, who spoke about destroying someone's entire existence with the same casual ease most people use to discuss the weather. But instead of fear, Emma felt something else entirely. Safety, protection, and yes, attraction. You said people call you Mr. Romano with respect, Emma said. What should I call you? Alessandro. Or Sandro, if you prefer. His smile was warmer now, more genuine. My friends call me Sandro. Are we friends? I'd like to be. Emma finished her wine, feeling the alcohol warm her from the inside out. Or maybe that was something else entirely. Can I ask you something? Anything. Are you married? Engaged? Involved with someone? The questions tumbled out before she could stop them, and she immediately felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment. I'm sorry. That's none of my business. No, Alessandro said simply. Not married, not engaged, not involved with anyone. Are you asking for a particular reason? Emma set down her empty wineglass, gathering her courage. Because I'm attracted to you, which is probably crazy considering we just met and you're you. But I can't stop thinking about how safe I felt the moment you stepped into that elevator. Alessandro was quiet for a long moment, and Emma began to worry she'd made a terrible mistake. Then he stood up and moved to the sofa, sitting close enough that she could smell his cologne, something expensive and masculine that made her think of cedar and bergamot. Emma, he said softly, I need you to understand something about me, about my life. The family business isn't exactly legal, Emma said. I figured that much out. Alessandro's eyebrows rose. And that doesn't bother you? Emma considered the question seriously. A week ago, she would have said yes, absolutely it bothered her. She'd built her entire career around the law, around justice, and doing the right thing. But tonight, the law had failed her. The system she believed in had left her vulnerable to Derek's escalating harassment. I've spent my whole adult life believing that if you followed the rules, if you worked hard and did the right thing, everything would work out, Emma said slowly. But Derek has been making my life hell for months, and the system I trusted to protect me basically shrugged and said there was nothing they could do. Meanwhile, you showed up and solved the problem in 5 minutes. So that's a no? It doesn't bother you? Emma looked at this man who had appeared like an avenging angel when she needed rescue most. She thought about his casual display of power, his obvious wealth, his reputation that made grown men back down with fear. She should be terrified of him. Instead, she felt drawn to him like a moth to flame. I'm sure I should be bothered by it, she said honestly. But right now, all I can think about is how you made me feel protected for the first time in months, and how much I want you to kiss me. Alessandro's sharp intake of breath was audible. Emma. Unless you don't want to, she said quickly. I don't want to assume. Alessandro's hand cupped her face, his thumb tracing over her cheekbone with devastating gentleness. I've wanted to kiss you since the moment you stepped out of that elevator. Then why haven't you? Because once I kiss you, there's no going back. Not for me. His thumb moved to trace her lower lip, and Emma's breath hitched. I don't do casual, Emma. I don't do temporary. If I kiss you, it's because I want everything. Emma's heart hammered against her ribs. What's everything? Everything, Alessandro repeated, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. Your mornings, your nights, Your laughter, your tears, your future. I want to be the person you call when you're happy, and the person who holds you when you're sad. I want to wake up next to you for the rest of my life." The declaration should have sent Emma running. They'd known each other for less than an hour. But looking into Alessandro's eyes, she saw something that Derek had never offered her. Complete devotion. This wasn't a man who would love her conditionally, or try to change her into someone else. This was a man who saw her clearly and wanted her exactly as she was. "That's terrifying," Emma whispered. "Yes," Alessandro agreed. "It is. And completely crazy." "Absolutely." Emma leaned closer until their faces were only inches apart. "Kiss me anyway." Alessandro's control snapped. His mouth captured hers with a hunger that stole her breath, one hand tangling in her auburn hair, while the other pulled her closer. Emma had been kissed before, but never like this. Never with such focused intensity, as if she were the only thing in the world that mattered. She kissed him back with equal fervor, her hands fisting in his expensive shirt. He tasted like wine and promises, and when he deepened the kiss, Emma felt herself melting against him. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Alessandro rested his forehead against hers. "Stay tonight," he said. "Not for anything other than sleep. I just want to know you're safe." Emma nodded, not trusting her voice. The rational part of her mind was screaming warnings, but her heart had made its choice the moment Alessandro Romano had stepped between her and danger. Alessandro led her to a guest bedroom that was larger and more luxurious than any hotel suite Emma had ever seen. He provided her with one of his dress shirts to sleep in and showed her where to find anything she might need. "Thank you," Emma said as he prepared to leave her alone. "For everything." Alessandro paused in the doorway. "Emma, Derek won't bother you again. You have my word." "What are you going to do to him?" "Nothing that he doesn't deserve," Alessandro said simply. "Sleep well." Emma spent the night in Alessandro's guest bed, wearing his shirt and breathing in the faint scent of his cologne on the fabric. She should have felt strange, sleeping in a virtual stranger's home. Instead, she felt safer than she had in months. She woke to the smell of coffee and something delicious cooking. Following the scents to a gourmet kitchen, she found Alessandro at the stove, fully dressed in another impeccable suit despite the early hour. He'd clearly been up for a while. "Good morning," he said, turning to smile at her. His eyes took in the sight of her wearing his shirt, and something heated flickered in their depths. "I hope you slept well?" "Better than I have in weeks." Emma tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, suddenly self-conscious. "You didn't have to cook breakfast." "I wanted to." Alessandro plated what looked like a restaurant-quality omelet and set it in front of her along with a cup of perfectly brewed coffee. "I also wanted to let you know that Derek Morrison moved out this morning, very early this morning." Emma's fork paused halfway to her mouth. "He's gone?" Vincent can be very persuasive when he needs to be. Derek decided that relocating to another state would be in his best interest. Alessandro sat across from her with his own breakfast. He also decided that he should probably seek some professional help for his drinking problem. "You did all that overnight?" Alessandro shrugged. "I'm an early riser." Emma stared at him, trying to process the casual way he'd eliminated a problem that had been terrorizing her for months. "I don't know how to thank you." "Have dinner with me tonight." "That's all?" Alessandro's smile was soft and genuine. "It's everything." Over the following weeks, Emma discovered that dating Alessandro Romano was like living in a fairy tale written by someone with unlimited resources and a deep understanding of what made her happy. He sent flowers to her office, not the generic roses most men chose, but carefully selected arrangements that reflected her personality. He took her to restaurants she'd only read about in magazines, and somehow always managed to get them a private table despite the weeks-long waiting lists. But more than the extravagance, Emma was drawn to Alessandro himself. He was intelligent and well-read, with opinions on everything from politics to literature to art. He listened when she talked about her work, asking thoughtful questions and offering insights that helped her see cases from new angles. He remembered details about her life that even her closest friends sometimes forgot, and he was unfailingly protective, without being possessive. When a drunk wedding guest at a charity gala got too handsy, Alessandro simply appeared at Emma's side, and the man quickly found somewhere else to be. When Emma mentioned that her elderly neighbor had been receiving suspicious phone calls, Alessandro quietly arranged for additional security in the building. "You solve everyone's problems," Emma said one evening as they walked along the lakefront after dinner. "Who solves yours?" Alessandro was quiet for a moment, his hand warm around hers. "I've always solved my own problems. It's safer that way." "Safer for who?" "For everyone involved." Alessandro stopped walking, turning to face her. "Emma, there are things about my life, about my family's business, that I can't change. I can protect you from most of it, but I can't pretend it doesn't exist." Emma reached up to touch his face, feeling the slight roughness of his 5 o'clock shadow beneath her palm. "Are you trying to scare me away? Maybe I should be." "Too late," Emma said simply. "I'm in love with you." Alessandro's breath caught. "Emma? I know it's fast. I know it's crazy. But I love you, Alessandro Romano. All of you, including the parts you think I should be afraid of." Alessandro kissed her then, right there on the lakefront path, with the same desperate intensity as their first kiss. When they broke apart, his eyes were bright with emotion. "I love you too," he said roughly. "More than I ever thought possible." 6 months later, Emma stood in the bridal suite of Chicago's most exclusive hotel, staring at herself in the mirror. Her wedding dress was a masterpiece of silk and lace, custom-made by a designer who usually only dressed European royalty. Her hair was swept up in an elegant chignon, held in place by a diamond tiara that had belonged to Alessandro's grandmother. "You look like a princess," her maid of honor said, adjusting the train of Emma's dress. Sarah had been Emma's college roommate and closest friend, and she'd been skeptical about Alessandro at first, but after seeing them together, even she had to admit they were perfect for each other. "I feel like I'm dreaming," Emma said softly. 6 months ago, I was being stalked by my ex-boyfriend. Now I'm about to marry the most incredible man I've ever met. And become the wife of one of the most powerful men in Chicago," Sarah added with a grin. "I have to admit, that's pretty cool." Emma's phone buzzed with a text message. She expected it to be from Alessandro, who had been sending her sweet messages all morning, despite the tradition that they shouldn't see each other before the ceremony. Instead, the message was from an unknown number. "You have no idea who you're marrying. He's dangerous. Run while you still can." Emma's blood ran cold. The message was followed by another. "Ask him what happened to Derek Morrison. Really happened." Sarah noticed Emma's expression change. "What is it? What's wrong?" Emma stared at the phone, her hands beginning to shake. Derek had disappeared completely after that night in the elevator. Alessandro had said he'd relocated to another state, but Emma had never tried to verify that. She'd been so relieved to have Derek out of her life that she hadn't asked questions. But now, with her wedding less than an hour away, doubt crept in like poison. What if Alessandro had done something terrible? What if Derek was— "Emma, you're scaring me," Sarah said. "What's in that message?" Before Emma could answer, there was a knock on the door. Sarah opened it to reveal Vincent, Alessandro's right-hand man and the person who had persuaded Derek to leave town. "Mrs. Wells?" Vincent's voice was respectful, but urgent. "Mr. Romano needs to speak with you privately. It's important." Emma's heart hammered in her chest. Did Alessandro know about the messages? Had something happened? Vincent led her to a small private room down the hall, where Alessandro was waiting. He looked devastatingly handsome in his black tuxedo, but his expression was troubled. "Emma, we need to talk," he said the moment Vincent closed the door behind them. "Is this about Derek?" Emma asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Alessandro's eyes sharpened. "What about Derek?" Emma showed him the messages on her phone. Alessandro's jaw clenched as he read them, and when he looked up, his eyes were cold with fury. "Emma, I need you to listen to me very carefully," Alessandro said. Derek Morrison is alive and well. He's living in Portland, Oregon, where he's been attending AA meetings and working at a nonprofit. Vincent spoke to him 3 days ago to make sure he was staying out of trouble. Then, who sent these messages? I have a pretty good idea. Alessandro took Emma's hands in his touch warm and steady. There are people who would benefit from disrupting this wedding. People who see our marriage as a threat to their own interests. Other families? Among others. Alessandro's thumb traced over her engagement ring, a stunning solitaire that caught the light like captured starfire. Emma, I won't lie to you. Marrying me does come with risks, but I swear to you, on my life, that Derek Morrison was never harmed. Vincent arranged for him to get into a treatment program, helped him find a job, even covered his first month's rent. Derek is building a new life, a better life. Emma searched Alessandro's eyes, looking for any sign of deception. She found none. But more than that, she found the same love and devotion she'd seen every day for the past 6 months. Why didn't you tell me all this before? Because I thought it would worry you unnecessarily. Derek was no longer a threat, so I saw no reason to burden you with the details. Alessandro lifted their joined hands, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. I should have been more transparent. If you want to call Vincent right now and have him get Derek on the phone so you can hear his voice, we'll do that. Emma felt the knot of fear in her chest beginning to loosen. This was Alessandro, the man who had protected her from the very beginning, who had never lied to her about anything else. The man who had spent 6 months proving his love in countless small ways. I don't need to call Derek, Emma said finally. I trust you. Alessandro's relief was visible. Are you sure? I'm sure. Emma stepped closer, straightening his bow tie even though it was already perfect. Besides, we have a wedding to get to, and I really don't want to keep 300 guests waiting. Alessandro smiled, the expression transforming his entire face. I love you, Emma Romano. I'm not Emma Romano yet, she said with a grin. Soon, Alessandro promised, pulling her close for a kiss that tasted like forever. 20 minutes later, Emma walked down the aisle of Chicago's most beautiful cathedral, her eyes locked on Alessandro's face. He stood at the altar looking like every fantasy she'd never dared to dream, and when she reached him, he took her hands with a reverence that made her heart overflow. Dearly beloved, the priest began, but Emma barely heard the words. She was lost in Alessandro's eyes, in the promise of their future together, in the absolute certainty that she was exactly where she belonged. When Alessandro slipped the wedding ring onto her finger and promised to love, honor, and protect her for the rest of their lives, Emma felt tears of joy slip down her cheeks. And when the priest pronounced them husband and wife, Alessandro's kiss was gentle and reverent, and full of all the love they would share in the years to come. Later, at the reception, Emma danced with her new husband under crystal chandeliers, while their friends and family celebrated around them. As Alessandro spun her around the dance floor, Emma caught sight of someone she didn't recognize. A man in the back of the room, watching them with cold eyes. Alessandro, she murmured against his ear. There's a man. I see him, Alessandro said calmly. Vincent's handling it. Emma looked, again, and saw that the man was gone, Vincent smoothly closing the ballroom doors behind him. Will it always be like this? Emma asked. People trying to disrupt our happiness? Alessandro pulled her closer, his cheek resting against her temple. Maybe, but they'll never succeed. I'll spend the rest of my life making sure you're safe and happy, Emma Romano. That's a promise. Emma smiled, feeling absolutely secure in his arms, despite the reminder that their life together wouldn't always be simple. I love you too, Mr. Romano. Forever? Forever. As they continued to dance, Emma thought about the night she'd first met Alessandro, the terror of Derek's hands around her throat, the moment Alessandro had stepped into that elevator like her own personal guardian angel. She'd been looking for safety that night, but she'd found so much more. She'd found her home, her future, her happily ever after, with a man who would move heaven and earth to protect her. And if that man happened to have the power to make problems disappear and enemies think twice, well, Emma was learning that fairy tales came in all different forms. The important thing was that they all ended the same way, with true love conquering everything and a promise of forever that nothing could break. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, because I am trying to prove to my mom that I can actually do this. It would mean the world to me. I love you all. Have a nice day.